my roots are in Llanathni. I was born here, I was raised here, I've raised my family here, and my girls are raising their family within the area. So yes, my roots go back to a very long time, and my parents and their parents before. So we're probably the 4th, 5th generation that have lived in Llanathni. The Pylon line affects us directly on our land, on this where the nursery is, and on our farmland as well. So yes, we're having a double whammy. I think Carmarthenshire is unique, if I'm honest. It's a mini version of the whole of Wales. We have our post-industrial areas, of course, but we also have this wonderful valley with its rich cultural history, and you can go back to Arglwydd Rhys, and further back if you wanted to. We had the Romans here nearly 2,000 years ago. So we have all this history in this valley, and it has to be protected. We have grade 2, grade 1 listed buildings here, we have ancient monuments here, and the Pylon line is coming either in front or behind these monuments. Is that good enough? Absolutely not, especially when there is an alternative, a viable alternative. When we had our first letter, back in January 2023, within a day we'd organised a local meeting just to have an idea of where everybody stood on this. It was unanimously against. I'm unanimous, as a family we're unanimously against, and we've been working solidly here in Llanathni over the past 18 months now to make sure that we have an option which is acceptable for us, that this comes but on our terms and what's acceptable for us as a community along the whole of the Tywi Valley. To be frank, it's been quite disappointing. As you know, right at the beginning, we were having people knocking on the doors within a week, actually, of those letters landing. And two men usually, well, they were all 2 men, actually, calling on people's doors to vulnerable elderly residents. And that wasn't good enough. They were challenged immediately on that, and they backed off a bit. Following on from that, we were looking at cable ploughing. And this seemed to us to be a viable and an alternative that was acceptable, I think, to everybody. Public meetings we had with our landowners confirmed that everybody was in favour. It was an unanimous decision there again. But even though they promised in May last year that they would be looking into the viability of cable ploughing, a year on, we're still waiting for those costings. We were promised again some 6 weeks ago that we would have this within 3 months. But in a meeting in Llandovery, I was told, no, we didn't promise you that. But I was in that meeting, not on my own, with 3 other members of Llanathni group, and we were promised. So it just seems a catalogue, if I'm honest, a catalogue of broken promises all the way through. And they're not, I don't feel that they're taking cable ploughing as seriously as we are. We're giving them an option which would give them access onto landowners' fields, and they're not taking it up, and they're choosing not to take it up. Well, exactly, it doesn't need to be considered. The only bit of Wales that can't be cable ploughed is in Pylon, where you have granite. It cannot go through granite, but it can go through anything else. So apart from Pylon, the whole of Wales, as they do in Denmark, as they do in Belgium, as they do in Holland, the whole of Wales can be cable ploughed. And that's what we've called for at the Plaid Cymru conference, is that we look at cable ploughing, that we use undergrounding as a viable option rather than the carbon sink of using concrete and steel. We don't need to have that technology anymore. That's over 75 years old and more, and yet we have an alternative. Let's use that alternative for the benefit of the people of Carmarthenshire. Julie James, when she was the Climate Change Minister, made the promise, or made a statement, she didn't make a promise, she made a statement that she would prefer that all new infrastructure be underground. But there was a caveat, where viable. Now what we need to do is to look at the where viable and to get rid of that. And I know in fairness that our Senedd members, Adam Price and Kevin Campbell, have been working very closely in order that we try and work our way around that, those two small words really, but that makes a huge difference. I think the Senedd has the ability to refuse this. They have the ability to do so, but whether they will want to do so is another issue. You know, we've had good conversations on policy and not on this, you know, they will not talk to us about this line specifically, but on policy issues. And the policy here is getting rid of where viable. If they get rid of where viable and make it underground, without that caveat at the end of it, then yes, they can turn it down and or insist that it's underground. And that's policy. So they have the ability to change policy, and they just need to make it absolutely clear that's what they want. Unfortunately now, of course, Julie James doesn't have net zero climate change in her portfolio. She still has planning, and planning is PEILONAU, who will make this decision, comes under planning. Planning comes under Julie James. So she will have the final say under the planning policy. I think they need to work with the people that they represent. We've had really good responses from, as I mentioned earlier, from Kevin and Adam. Jonathan was great as well, in fairness. Although this is a Senedd decision, he cajoled the Energy Minister up in Westminster for us, and that's what I will be doing actually, is lobbying the Energy Minister, because we need to have a system, or we need to have a policy and a system that works for us here. What works in other parts of the UK isn't what works for us in Wales here, with our heritage and what we have here. We have to respect what's been here before in order that we can move forward. For our children and my grandchildren's sake, really, we need to respect what we've got. And I don't think this is doing that at all. The reason I want to go to Westminster, if I'm going to be honest, is because 400 kilovolt cables are decided up in Westminster. 132s are decided in Cardiff. 400 kilovolts are placed underground, or are organised by National Grid. 132 can be Joe Bloggs and their partners, really, as long as they have this licence from Ofgem. So my feeling is that we need a Carmarthenshire voice up there fighting this, and somebody who's understood it, somebody who's fought this battle right from the word go, who understands the difference between the 132 dual circuit line and a 400 main line, which will come down from Bangor to Swansea, but that might well be Bangor to Llandovery with the size of the substation that's being built there. So we just need to have somebody there that understands this and isn't afraid to fight the fight, and I will fight the fight. There's several things, isn't there? For me, it would be the natural history, the natural beauty that we have here. Biodiversity is bound to be affected. You have a concrete pad which would be 10 metres by 10 metres by 10 metres in depth in order to hold the pylon up. That's bound to have an effect on the biodiversity around that field. But you have those every 250 metres. So we could we will have up to 300 pylons. They aren't allowed to go through peat bogs, but does that mean that they won't? I'm not confident on that, if I'm honest. And I think apart from the the commercial value, you know, the devaluation of your property, and that's another issue. But it's more than that for me, to be honest. I do not want my children and my grandchildren having to sort this out in 50 years' time or in 40 years' time because of a decision that we've made here. We have to fight it. We have to give them the future that they deserve. And what's wrong with cable ploughing? Why aren't they looking at this as a viable option? They could have saved themselves hundreds of thousands of pounds in time and effort and energy if they just got on, cracked on and did the job. No, they're not doing us a favour. I think it's an extractive economy again. We're using the natural resources that we have in Wales, not for the benefit of Wales. Nobody can tap into this. If I wanted a small solar farm here, I wouldn't be able to tap into it without having a small substation in order to in order to align the two levels of energy, that's one that's coming through and one that I'm generating. That can't be, it's not like putting in a plug with a 13 amp fuse. It's nowhere near that simple. Yes, it is an extractive economy and we don't need it. I don't mind it coming through, but it has to come on our terms, not on what's cheaper for them or makes it easier for them to flip this project once they have planning permission, which is what I think that they will want to do.
What do you mean by that? I
mean that they will sell it off. They'll have planning and they'll sell it off to any other company in order to build it. I'm perfectly sure that they have no intention of building it themselves. They'll flip it, they'll sell it. It will be easier for them to sell it with pylons than it will with a cable plough planning consent.